Hi, Dolphins. Welcome to another episode of Pod Talks. My name is Jay Castellanos. I'm a career counselor at CSUCI. Today, I am very excited to introduce our guest. Andy Spyrka is a resource conservation specialist at the Ventura County Resource Conservation District, a special district of the state of California. He focuses on environmental science, education, outreach, and public engagement. And Andy graduated from CSUCI with a Bachelors of Science degree in environmental science and a minor in biology. Let us please welcome to the show, Andy. Andy, thank you for being here.
Well, thanks for having me, Jake. I look forward to it. I'm happy to lend a hand however I can to any prospective students graduating.
Awesome. Thank you. Andy, first and foremost, how are you staying safe and well during these times?
Well, aside from going crazy, probably like most of us are at this point, it's been about a year now with all the restrictions. So, just trying to find new, interesting things to really do with all of our newfound time that we all have on our hands on our weekends when we thought we were so busy doing other stuff. Well, I can tell you off the bat, I'm tired of watching TVs and movies. That's probably starting to drive me insane, especially when I started seeing the masks, which I get, they need to have masks on set and stuff. I'm like, I'm trying to escape this right now. So, so one benefit of the whole situation, it's really pushed me to be much more outdoors than I've been in recent years. I'm hiking every weekend. I'm trying to camp as much in the Padres every, 4 to 6 weeks if I can, get away on a Friday or Saturday. Going to the beach, even when it's raining, having a picnic, or just or just walking my dog. It's funny because, as you know, and as we've kind of discussed, my career revolves around nature and the outdoors. So I'm often caught up in the day-to-day tasks at my office. I don't really get out that much. So it's kind of ironic that this has really pushed me to do that more. And I love it. I enjoy it. Last weekend, I just drove up with my fiance to the snow just to do it because we had nothing better to do anyways.
That's great. And being outside, it's kind of cathartic, right? Being able to be out there and enjoy and appreciate nature, and it's a good tool to kind of relax yourself also as well.
Oh, most definitely. And I mean, being in Ventura County, we're so lucky with the amount of outdoor space we have. It's really remarkable and underutilized by the residents, I would say, for the most part, because half the time when I'm up in the Padres or in the San Monicas, I get so many like coming out doing stuff. So it's just remember where we live, and we have a really good opportunity just to be outdoors, the mountain bike ride or just hiking, really.
That's awesome. Yeah, I definitely agree. And the great weather to go along with all of that too, that the central coast of California brings, which is
oh yeah, and it's only getting better. So
exactly. So Andy, kind of tell us today, and whoever's joining us today, what do you do for work? Kind of what goes into the day-to-day in your work as a conservation specialist?
Yeah. Well, as you said, Jake, I'm resource conservation specialist, essentially a project manager, really. Work for the Ventura County Conservation District. There's about 100 RCDs throughout the entire state, and I may be biased, but I want to do a quick plug. I honestly think RCDs are the best organization to work for, especially for science-based careers that are right out of college. Primary reason being that we have a broad definition of what we can work on, as you kind of touched on. It really allows for diverse and interesting projects to be completed and accomplished. So as you said, specifically, we focus on environmental science, research, education, conservation, outreach, public engagement. I create and manage my own projects. I write grants to local, state, and federal agencies and organizations. And I pretty much ask for funding. And I say, hey, come fund my projects. And they do, surprisingly, unbeknownst to me, I'm always happy. I'm like, wow, okay. So real brief, some of the projects I currently am working on, they involve wildfire prevention and education, environmental restoration, such as wildfire recovery, monarch butterfly conservation. That's always a fun one to do. Everyone loves going out on the weekend and counting butterflies. I do research studies. I have a few. I act as a resource advisor to the UC system and manage some environmental working groups, such as Ventura Watershed Council. It's a lot for any one person, but luckily I have a team that is pretty well oiled behind the scenes and helps me accomplish so much. as much as I love doing research and restoration, really one portion of my position I probably enjoy the most is community engagement, in all honesty. It's not always as hard as technical stuff, but it's something that I believe is vital and important, and it's known to be lacking in the science realm. As great as it is to conduct interesting projects such as butterfly conservation or wildfire prevention and education, it's all for nothing if you really can't teach the real world how to understand and take advantage of the results. But in a nutshell, that's kind of what I do. So I kind of answered that question there.
Awesome. That's a lot of great work. And it does seem like a lot that goes into your responsibilities, but it seems like you also have a great network and community that you can work with to make those collaborations, which is awesome.
Yeah, and like I said, earlier, we live in such an environmentally focused area. It's easy conversations to have, and people are just engaged in it and want to keep Ventura County really beautiful. So it's not a hard lift for me to argue people.
That's great. That's great. So Andy, what are some pieces of advice you would share to someone right now searching for work?
Well, start volunteering and interning, however and wherever and whenever you can. Trust me, you can find the time. When I graduated, I must have had 4 to 6 internships under my belt. And it can be really rewarding depending on what you're doing. Don't forget to ask your professors about opportunities for research or jobs they just might know of. They're really one of the biggest supporters for any students watching this right now. Most of them are well established in their career field, and they really do have the connections that you want to start leaning on, especially if you're a senior or junior. Junior is probably one of the best times to start leaning on those connections. You're kind of focused on what you want to do, and they really help you get there. But more importantly, just be patient and understanding. Most who see this are probably graduating or about to or on the path. So it's perfectly okay to not have a job right off the bat. Many graduates don't, the odds of getting a high paying job, great benefits, flexibility right out of college is pretty rare. Plus opportunities like that come with a lot of responsibilities, stuff that you probably want to learn before you get to that point. You really will most likely need to work yourself up through the ranks, and that's okay, gain working knowledge. But like I said, if you can volunteer and intern, it really helps you climb that ladder a little bit more. And talk to your college professors. They sometimes have paid internships and paid research assistants at school, at Channel Islands, that you can take advantage of.
That's great. We talk about networking as a critical piece for everyone to use in their careers. And so I'm really glad that you mentioned, to take on those opportunities.
Yeah, it's really about, like anything else, about who you know. You can be the smartest person in the room, but if no one knows that, you're not networking, you're not doing anything to help anyone. It's just so important. And your fellow colleagues in college right now are going to be your colleagues in a few years, right? So make those friendships and partnerships now, because I can tell you, I work with a good handful of people who I went to college with, and they're working to other organizations who I'm like, oh, they'd be a great partner. Let me outreach to them. And there you go. All because we went to Channel Islands together. Your network's growing right now. Take advantage of it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. So, Andy, are there any trends you've noticed within the environmental science field, industry? And do you have any specific advice for someone looking to get hired in the environmental science field?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do. I guess I'll first start off with some trends. The environmental industry is very broad. It's very broad. Just a few years ago, I was working in sewer plants doing environmental compliance. I'm a world away from that now, but my point being, remain open-minded in your career path. Try as many opportunities as possible before you settle. You really don't know what's going to pique your interest. You're graduating right now, you have an idea, but you've got to narrow that, but try as much as you can. You have the opportunity out of college. For the environmental field, I'd recommend focusing on ArcGIS, of course. That's a mapping software. It's becoming intertwined with everything. If you stay in the West, think about wildfire. Projects can range from prevention and education, community engagement, to water quality improvement and ecosystem recovery. It's all very exciting stuff. It's a growing issue, which isn't going away anytime soon. In fact, it's most likely receiving priority funding as climate change continues for the worst. And then water is also a great industry to get involved with, especially here. Ventura watershed is one of the main watersheds that are being looked at across the whole state, how to handle our future issues with water and lack of it. So there's some stuff that I would try to focus on if you're in the environmental industry, and all those are even broad. Fire and water, they get even broader themselves in GIS. Some advice for interviews, should be able to have some. I do conduct interviews, so I do, first thing, honestly, what I like to see is do some background research on the company. Presumably you're applying to a company you want to work with, right? That you enjoy. So check out the website, check out their projects, create some questions so you did your research and actually care for the position you're interviewing for. So many environmental firms and organizations really do have a passion or moral and ethics behind what they do, and they want to make sure you share that same value. Bring a notepad to the interview with you and ask some specific questions. You know, it shows you're prepared and you're engaged and you're ready to tackle issues. You know, you're interviewing the company at the same time, not just the other way around. You know, and lastly, and I always tell people, if you have a great opportunity come across your desk, even if you just got hired somewhere for one of your other dream jobs, you got to take it. You know, you don't owe that company anything. People seem to get this mistake that, oh, well, they just hired me. And no, you got to do what's best for you at the end of the day.
That's great. Thank you, Andy. I appreciate you sharing all that great advice. And, you know, I appreciate you sharing kind of, you know, in terms of the environmental science field and sector, how it's such a broad field and broad range of opportunities to keep your mind open and to try different experiences to kind of see.
It is. And I mean, that's one nice part about it. You know, I've done research on the islands and the mountains, sewer plants, and it is very broad. But you get a lot of opportunity to do a lot of cool stuff with that. You know, take advantage of it.
Right on. Nice. If you were to say in your career, what's been the best advice you've received, and how have you used it in your career?
So most importantly, ask questions. Really, you're probably going to hear that across the board. I can't tell you how many times I've had people completely miss the concept at hand because they simply failed to ask questions, possibly out of embarrassment. You know, one thing about being young in this field is I have a lot of people who are older than me who work under me, and they get embarrassed asking me questions. But no, you've got to ask questions. Take accountability. You know, if you make a mistake, acknowledge it, course correct, and change for the future. Not knowing the answer to everything's okay. And again, most likely if you're listening to this, you're just out of college, you're on your way. People don't expect you to have working knowledge of the world. You know, you're just beginning your professional career. We all know book smarts isn't street smarts. So assure yourself that you two are still learning and keep that attitude and really don't stop trying to learn. Just keep learning in your own job. It doesn't stop just because you graduated. I'll tell you right now, you've got a whole world of learning ahead of you.
That's awesome. That's awesome. That's great advice. So, Andy, if you could kind of share and surmise for us, what does the CS2CI community mean to you, and how are you staying connected to the community today?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a while since I've been in the CI community. So one thing I think about CI, I think about community, compassion, and really partnership. It's a close-knit community that really does care for everyone. I came from a small town in Northern California, and that's what got my attention, is how small it was and how close it was to the beach, but it's a different story. You know, the professors want to see the students succeed. That's one thing I really love. And that's why I'm saying to engage with these professors. And not only do they want to see the students succeed, but most of the students actually want to try. They want to succeed. Some of the fondest memories that I do have at CI, I'll probably sound like somewhat of a nerd, are study groups, specifically for hard sciences, such as chemistry. It's a tough topic, but at least one person in the study group always had a handle on the weekly subject matter and willingly took the time to explain it to others because they knew next week they might be on the other side of the table. It's this type of community that I think CI really does boast. I think it's part due to the demographic of CI. It's made up of unique and really hardworking and passionate people who really tried hard to be there, and see it as a privilege at the end of the day. One way I'm staying connected is through the career development and alumni engagement. I have students really reach out to me almost monthly, asking about advice on their career paths. Hopefully I dish it well to them, but I think most of the time they're just asking for an unbiased backboard, and I try to give that to them at the end of the day. Other than that, luckily I have pretty broad authority here, and I can bring on interns, which is great. And I do bring on interns from CI as much as I can because I get it, and we try to work with their schedule as much as possible. So there are two ways I really try to connect with the CI community still.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And do you have any last words of inspiration or motivation for whoever is joining us today?
I do, other than take a deep breath. But right now, whoever's watching this, you have an extraordinarily strong foundation underneath you. The door is just opening. Don't be scared to take a step right through it. Keep your head down, try your best, ask questions. The stars will eventually align, trust me. Find a job that makes you happy, and the money is going to follow. It's okay to trip up every so often. We aren't perfect, but be sure to keep getting up, and because unbeknownst to you, your life's really just beginning.
Great advice, and wise sage advice, Andy, from you. So we appreciate that. We appreciate your time and for you joining us today. And hope you continue to stay safe and well. Okay.
Same to you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
All right. Take care.
All right. Bye, Jake.